I was 34, and convinced I knew every rhythm of my life, every creak of the stairs, every habit of the woman I had loved since college. Our evenings were predictable in the way comfort disguises itself as certainty. I came home, loosened my tie, complained about traffic, and Jennifer made tea in my favorite mug, the blue one with the joke she said made me smile. That night should have been the same. Instead, it cracked my life cleanly in two. I arrived early because a migraine had been drilling behind my eyes all afternoon. I texted her that I was leaving, but traffic vanished like a gift, and I pulled into the driveway far sooner than usual. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you listen. As I stepped inside, I heard her voice from the kitchen, low and tight. The sound she used only when she didn't want to be overheard. She said my name, not lovingly, but like an obstacle. She said she was close, that the pills worked, that I went out every night by 8:30. The word pills echoed like a dropped plate. I crept down the hallway and saw her with her back to me. Phone pressed to her ear. Steam curled from my mug on the counter. She ended the call, reached into her pocket, and poured 2 white tablets into her palm. She dropped them into the tea and stirred until they vanished. She tapped the spoon. She placed the mug exactly where I always sat. My hands shook so hard I had to grip the wall. I backed away and left the house without making a sound. In the car, my heart tried to outrun my breath. I called her from 2 streets over and told her I was leaving work late, told her the headache was bad. She cooed sympathy and offered tea. When I returned on schedule, she kissed my cheek and handed me the mug with a smile that suddenly felt rehearsed. I pretended to drink, letting the liquid barely touch my lips, dumping it into plant pots and the sink when she turned away. The fern, by the table, long drooping, soaked it up greedily. When the mug was empty, she studied my face like a nurse charting vitals. I told her I was exhausted and went to bed early. I lay there, eyes closed, breathing slow, listening. She checked once, twice. Then she left the room. The house hummed with appliances, with distant cars, with my blood in my ears. I waited until my watch ticked past 9, then opened my eyes. She returned with her phone and a folder I had never seen. She sat at the desk and whispered again, this time freer, like a runner nearing the finish. She talked about accounts, about signatures, about timing. She said my headaches made it easier, said I trusted her. She said I wouldn't feel a thing. When she laughed, it wasn't joy. It was relief. I filmed from the dark, my phone angled just enough to catch her reflection in the mirror. She opened the folder and spread papers across the desk. Our house. My accounts. A policy with my name, typed neatly where a beneficiary should be. She signed something and slid it into an envelope. Then she did something that froze me colder than fear. She opened my laptop, already unlocked, and typed a password I had never shared. She knew it anyway. I slipped from the bed and followed her soundlessly down the stairs. The back door opened. Cold air rushed in. I watched from the shadows as she met a man by the fence. A silhouette I recognized from neighborhood barbecues, someone who had shaken my hand and asked about work. They spoke in urgent murmurs. He handed her a bag. She handed him the envelope. He said it would be over soon. She said she was ready. When she came back inside, I returned to bed and counted my breaths until she checked again. Her hand hovered over my shoulder, then withdrew. She left, and the house slept, but I did not buy mourning. I had decided. I would not confront her. I would not warn her. I would let her believe the pills worked. I would pretend to sleep. And I would watch everything. When dawn crept in, pale and ordinary, I felt the strangest calm. The kind that comes when fear gives way to purpose. I kissed her cheek on my way to work and thanked her for the tea. She smiled, satisfied, and I walked out knowing the man who would come home that night would be someone else entirely. I spent the day moving through meetings like a ghost, nodding at charts and forecasts while my mind catalogued every detail from the night before. I replayed her words, her laugh, the way she had known my password. I booked an appointment with my doctor during lunch, describing the migraines, the fatigue, the fog that had been creeping in. He frowned and ordered blood work, Asked about stress, about sleep. I didn't tell him about the tea. Not yet. That evening, I arrived home on schedule and slipped back into the familiar routine. Jennifer kissed me, handed me the mug, watched as I pretended to drink. This time, I poured it carefully into a thermos hidden in my bag. Later, alone in the garage, I sealed it and labeled it with the date. I slept lightly, listening, watching shadows. She checked on me again. She always did. Over the next week, I became an actor in my own life. I feigned worsening headaches, earlier bedtimes, deeper sleep. I set my phone to record every night, capturing whispers, calls, documents laid bare. The fern revived, then died, leaves browning as the tea soaked into the soil. I stopped watering it and took photos. I collected evidence the way a cautious man builds a lifeboat plank by plank. The blood work came back. Sedatives, not prescribed to me. Enough to explain everything. The doctor asked questions I answered carefully. He told me to be careful. He told me to be safe. I nodded and left with copies of the results. Jennifer grew bolder. She talked louder on the phone. She left papers out. She practiced a speech in the mirror, eyes shining with a future she believed was certain. The man from the fence came twice more. Once, they argued. Once, she cried and said it had to be soon. Each time, I filmed, heart steady, hands sure. I met with a lawyer recommended by a friend who didn't ask too many questions. In a quiet office, I laid everything out. The recordings, the lab results, the mug, the thermos, the plant. He listened without interruption, then said words that felt like oxygen. We can stop this. We can do it cleanly. We can do it safely. He advised patience. He advised precision. The night it all turned, she poured the tea with a flourish and smiled like someone delivering a gift. I drank just enough to wet my lips and went to bed early, phone recording, body tense. She waited longer than usual. When she finally left the room, I followed, silent. She opened the safe hidden behind a painting and removed a thick envelope. She dialed a number and spoke with a certainty that no longer surprised me. Tonight, she said. Tonight, it ends. I stepped into the light. Her scream cut the house in half. The phone clattered to the floor. She stared at me like I had risen from the dead. I told her to sit. I told her to put the envelope down. I told her I knew. She laughed once, sharp and brittle, and then she cried. She said it wasn't what it looked like. She said she loved me. She said she was desperate. She said my headaches scared her. I said stop. The police arrived quietly. The lawyer arrived to... The man from the fence did not run. He confessed faster than I expected. The pills were his. The plan was theirs. The policy named her. The documents were forged. The recordings spoke when words failed. By morning, the house was full of strangers and empty of lies. Jennifer sat wrapped in a blanket, eyes hollow. She did not look at me as they led her away. I watched from the doorway, feeling the weight of 7 years lift like a storm passing. The migraine was gone. I stood in the kitchen alone and washed the mug until it gleamed. I poured the remaining tea down the sink and watched it disappear. I opened the windows and let the cold air in. Outside, the sun rose ordinary and bright, and for the first time in weeks, I believed it. I didn't go back to the house after that night. I stayed with a friend while the investigation unfolded, while statements were taken and timelines reconstructed. The quiet gave me space to breathe and to think about how close I had come to trusting the wrong person with my life. Some mornings I woke in a panic, heart racing, reaching for a mug that wasn't there. Other mornings I woke calm, grounded by the simple fact that I was still alive, and finally awake to the truth. The days that followed were filled with paperwork, court dates, and conversations I never imagined having. Friends reacted with shock, disbelief, anger on my behalf. A few admitted they had noticed changes in Jennifer but never thought to question them. I didn't blame anyone. Manipulation works best when it hides behind normalcy. I learned that survival sometimes depends on paying attention to the smallest details and trusting that discomfort you try so hard to ignore, that as the case moved forward. I focused on rebuilding routines that were mine alone. Morning runs replaced the evening tea ritual. I cooked meals for myself and rediscovered how much peace there was in simple silence. The migraines faded completely. The fog lifted. It was as if my body had been waiting for permission to heal. I started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand how love can turn into control without warning. Looking back, the most terrifying part wasn't the pills or the plan. It was how easily I could have missed it all. One late meeting, one heavier traffic jam, and I might not be here to tell this story. That thought keeps me honest with myself and vigilant about my surroundings. It also reminds me that awareness is not paranoia, it's self-respect. If you're watching this and something in your life feels off, don't dismiss it. Pay attention. Ask questions. Protect yourself, even when it feels uncomfortable. Trusting your instincts doesn't make you weak, it makes you alive. If this story gripped you, shocked you, or made you think twice about the people around you, support the channel by liking this video and subscribing for more real stories of betrayal, survival, and truth. New stories are uploaded regularly, each one revealing how quickly life can change when secrets come to light. Share this video with someone who needs the reminder to stay aware, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Sometimes, telling the story is how we make sure it never happens again.